Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Anand and this is the Scale Playbook, a new mini podcast series under our Seed to Scale initiative. While most of our other podcasts are targeted towards early stage founders looking to build and scale their companies, we thought it would make sense to have another mini series, especially for founders facing fast growth, to discuss scale issues they might encounter and how they can navigate those. Hence the name The Scale Playbook. In this series, we will unravel the playbook for solving scale challenges across different business verticals like engineering, product, marketing, sales, strategy, HR, to name a few, through candid and pinpointed conversations with specialists from some of the most successful startups from the ecosystem. I hope you find these conversations relevant and helpful. To learn more about Seed2Scale initiative and to check out our show notes, head on to our website seedtoscale.com/insights after listening to this podcast. My guest today is Axel's very own venture partner, Ajay Sethi. Over the years, Ajay has worked with most of our portfolio companies to help them achieve deliberate and sustainable growth. Along with a team of domain experts, he helps portfolio companies to build better castles and dig deeper and broader moats. He not only provides frameworks and templates for product-led growth, but also works closely with the portfolio companies based on actionable insights uncovered via quantitative and qualitative benchmarks across various growth drivers such as product, organic acquisition, paid marketing, brand, and others. Previously, Ajay was an entrepreneur for 8 years. He started his entrepreneurship journey in 2005, and his first startup was among the earliest VC-backed companies in India. His startups built, launched, and scaled category-first products such as mobile-only search networking engines, and mobile payment services. Earlier, Ajay spent 8 years at Oracle. As you might have guessed, today's episode is focused on uncovering the different drivers of value creation and hence growth. We chat with Ajay on his learnings from his experience working with various portfolio companies. We talk about different types of product-led growth and how some of the best companies have unlocked these various growth drivers. We also talked about which growth driver to unlock when and how one can go about it. Hope you find this conversation helpful and actionable for your own startup journey. Welcome to the podcast, Ajay. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Anand. Good to be here.
Great. So let's start on this growth journey with you. With maybe the first question is, what are the different drivers of value creation growth for a company? Laid out for us. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, this question actually has received a lot of attention over the last 30 years or so. And actually, this is an important question, not only for private companies, it could be either venture-backed or self-funded, but also for public companies. And I think starting from research done long ago by Berkshire Hathaway, and I think popularized by Warren Buffett, and then taken, after that, Morningstar, an investment research firm, took the lead from them. They dug very deep into this, and they actually identified 5 key value creation drivers. And over time, they initially were looking at the non-digital companies such as Coca-Cola, See's Candy, Nike, and so on and so forth. More recently, several VCs have also started looking deeply into this area. And this time they use the prism of the digital companies. Right? And surprisingly, everyone actually ends up coming up with a similar set of value creation and growth engines. And based on our own analysis, across a wide variety of digital first companies, we found there are 4 value creation drivers. These are scale, which includes both the supply side scale as well as the demand side scale. Second is habit, which is the stickiness or the habit that gets formed with the users. Some of the earlier works used to refer to this as the lock-in, but for digital first company, obviously, voluntary habituation is much more valuable and better in terms of the long-term value of the company. Third one is brand, which is the emotional connect a company establishes with its users and its potential users. And this actually depends on, let's say, patents, other proprietary technology that the companies might have built. But patents and other intangible assets are the foundation. On top of it, a company has to build the emotional connect with the users, which is a separate activity. So that's number 3, brand. And the fourth one, perhaps the most important one, is network effects. And network effects is simply defined phenomena by which the value of a product increases as the number of users increase. Right? And in the internet era, some of the largest companies, whether it's Facebook, Google, Amazon, each of them has actually leveraged network effects to a large extent. So these are the 4 value creation drivers that we look at: scale, habit, brand, and number 4, network effects.
Got it. We'll get into each of these, but before that, there's a lot of talk about product-led growth. What exactly is product-led growth?
Yeah, product-led growth is the idea that companies can scale more effectively and faster if they can leverage products to drive customer reach and customer access. Right? So it also includes activities which allows users to onboard themselves in a self-serve manner. It's a good idea, but in some sense, I think it's a limiting idea. And the reason I think it's a limiting idea because using products to drive scale is just one of the possible mechanisms. Right? For example, in our own Indian ecosystem, we have seen companies like Flipkart, Myntra, Policybazaar. Each of them has actually used marketing very, very efficiently. Right? They have used performance marketing, brand marketing, and other mechanisms to actually grow very rapidly. And even in this current IPL, we see Byju's, Policybazaar, Swiggy, Dream11, Cred. These companies are heavily advertising, and as a result of that, growing very, very rapidly. Right? So I think personally, I prefer to go with horses for courses strategy for driving scale. Right? And product is just one way in which you can deliver value and to drive scale. Actually, what's more important is in terms of when you're looking to scale the company, is to actually look at how you can deliver value to the users. And delivering value to users results in higher engagement with users. And engagement, just to give an example, can also be driven by, for example, using content, right? And it can be driven by, let's say, viral marketing, right? Which is, I think, Dollar Shave Club and within Axel portfolio, Rentomojo have done a good job in terms of using viral marketing for driving scale. So in my mind, actually, product-led growth is better, or maybe a bigger way of looking at is to look at engagement-led growth, which that mental model actually frees up from the limitation that the product-led growth imposes and allows a company to look at a holistic view and figure out various mechanisms. And product is just one mechanism to achieve growth and to scale faster.
What is engagement-led growth? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure.
Product?
Yeah. So engagement-led growth is actually, goes to the core of the thing, saying companies, how can company deliver more value to users, right? Because if a company can deliver more value to users, it can therefore, help, that can help company grow much faster, right? And also, important part here is that, scale is just one of the growth drivers. We have talked about 4 growth drivers, right? There is the habit, there is the brand, and there's the network effects, right? So we have to actually look at holistically and look at which user activities can help a company to, not only scale faster, which is the product-led growth does, but look at other engagement activities which can help the company to engage the users, whether it be for driving more habit, for building or strengthening brand, and of course for driving network effects. Right? So those are the I look at the engagement-led growth as the overarching umbrella under which you can look at various activities and come up with various solutions which help the company to achieve superlinear growth.
Got it. Good. So let's now dive into each of those aspects, each of the 4 aspects that you talked about. Let's start with the first one you mentioned, scale.
Yeah.
Right. So what are some of the ways of achieving scale and scaling faster for a company? Maybe you can also throw in some examples and talk about those case studies. Yeah.
Sure. Actually, let's start with an example. So I think let's go back to 2015 or 2016. and I'm thinking of Vedantu, which is a edtech company. By 2015-16, Vedantu has established product market fit. They had actually insane number of annual retention. I think they had more than 90% retention rate at that time. Right? And in general, when they talk to users, which is students and parents, they were very happy with the tuition classes. But Vedantu actually was facing a real challenge at that time. And the challenge was that they had only a few thousand customers. Right? Despite having built a superlative product, they were finding it very, very hard to scale. Right? And the question is, why was that, right? Why is it that, despite building such a great product, they were not able to scale? And the reason was that back in 2015, unlike today, parents and students were not used, they were not used to online tuition. And as a result, they were not looking for online tuition classes online. Right? So as the impact of that, there was hardly any Google search traffic, which limited the ability, Vedantu's ability to acquire users digitally. Right? And even if the few leads that they were getting, the users were not sure about the efficacy of online tuition. And as a result, the conversion rates are very low and the CAC was very high. Right? So in fact, actually, if you look at it, Vedantu, what the challenges it was facing back in 2015 is no different from the challenges that any category creating company faces, right? Because category creating companies have to make people aware that a better solution exists, right? And the question then becomes, okay, how does post product market fit company solve this problem? Because this is a very recurring problem, and the solution actually is to understand user psychology, right? So the psychology here is education is actually an important decision. It's an important activity from students' point of view as well as from parents' point of view, right? Because it's a big decision, and it can impact students' academic performance. People are reluctant to adopt a new solution, right? And therefore, then the next question becomes, okay, then how do you solve this problem? Because this is what the company is building. This Vedantu is building an online tuition platform. What can you do? And I think the answer to that is to identify a user activity which has lower importance as well as high frequency. Right? In EdTech category, such an activity which is high frequency but lower importance is actually doing school homework. Right? So students get homework from school every day, and as always, students want to get done with that as soon as possible. Right? They don't want to spend even an extra minute if they can afford to.
Or like my kids don't want to do it.
Exactly. So sometimes you have to do it. Actually, you have to do it, right? So you want to find a shortcut. You want to find somehow to cut through the chase and get the answer, and which is exactly what Vedantu did. They actually came up with what they called NCRT solution, which is basically an answer to all the questions that are end of the chapter for all the classes from class 5th to 12th, across different subjects. Right? So when you get a homework from school, you go to this NCRT solution, you give your email address, that's it, and you get the answer, and you copy the answer and you're done, you can go out and play, right? Or do whatever else you want to do. Right? So that's what happened, and that is what actually helped Vedantu to start scaling. Right? So the important thing here is that once Vedantu reduced the importance of activity by building a new product or a new solution, right, which is catering to this activity, which is lower importance but higher frequency, it made it easier for people to adopt this solution. They became aware of Vedantu, and over time, they started, creating a positive outlook towards Vedantu, which is what helped Vedantu to eventually start selling more and more subscriptions.
Got it. So this is one way of scaling, and is that this is would you classify this as product-led scaling, or are there other ways of scaling as well, like marketing-led, and you touched upon some of these?
Yeah.
What are the various ways? Yeah.
And there are actually, and if you look at Byju's, which is the largest edtech company in India, has obviously used the marketing as a very, very effective mechanism to grow. Right? So there's a very different approach to growth. Right? But and I think, we have to look at this holistically, right? We have to understand which is this frequent activity that people are doing, which you can leverage to actually grow faster. And to take another example, in some sense, you can say Vedantu, what it came up with was a content-led solution, right? They came up with a solution so that people can find answers quickly and then, get solve the problem. Another company, also edtech company, Doubtnut, right, which actually started much, much later, started in 2015, 2016, looked at the same problem of doing school homework quickly, and came up with actually even a better solution than Vedantu's NCERT solution. And the solution was that students could upload any question, which need not be from the back of the book, end of the chapter question. And the platform, using an AI-driven system, would churn and come up with the right answer. Right. So when Vedantu was building a static solution to the problem, Doubtnut came up with an interactive video-first product to solve the same problem. Right. And with this solution, Doubtnut grew really rapidly. I think they became the third largest edtech company in terms of, at least in number of users, and was recently bought by Byju's for more than $100 million. Right. So that becomes another way of solving this problem. Right. So I think it's very important to, therefore, again, to emphasize, it's very important to look at this as a solution to a frequent problem that people face, and then come up with the right solution. It could be either a content, it could be marketing, which is what Byju's did, or it could be a product, which is what Doubtnut did, right, to solve that problem.
Got it. And how is this different from SEO? And SEM is the part of marketing, and similarities, differences, and also we've talked about consumer companies. Maybe give an example of non-consumer, maybe SaaS or some other company.
Sure. Yeah. I think so. I think the very, very important thing here is to actually first and foremost keep in mind that when we start putting the marketing hat, suddenly the mindset becomes let's come up with let's say a landing page onto which people can actually come and quickly engage with the product and maybe drop a lead, which then the company can use to convert the lead into a customer. Right? Yeah. So for engagement-led strategy to work, I think that mindset has to be done away with. Right? It's very important for these. I call them scale boosters. It's very important for these scale boosters to provide value on their own. Right? And the choice of adopting the main product, which is the tuition subscription for Vedantu, for example, should be left to a later date. The intent of Scale Booster is to make people aware that the product, that the company exists, and that it offers a solution. But one should not push people down the funnel. Right? So that's number one. Number two, when you asked about the SaaS or whether it's applicable broader, and I think clearly it's very applicable, because the spectrum of activities in terms of the frequency and importance, these are human activities, so they exist in all domains, right? Now, to give you a specific example, let's look at Freshworks, which obviously provides whole suite of services to the mid-market customers, right? So business customers. So one of the services that Freshworks offers is called FreshPing, which is basically what they call forever free tool that anyone can use to monitor the uptime of the website. So you can go to the freshping.io and enter the URL of the website and your email address, and you can start monitoring your website. So now FreshPing is actually a very good example of this engagement-led scale, and because it allows people to start using this product, which is very frequent. Every few seconds, it pings your website, sends you an alert if something goes wrong. Right? Therefore, people become aware of Freshworks. Right? And in fact, I would say HubSpot in some sense was the originator of this, or actually exploited this to a large extent with, very famous or very popular website grader that came up long ago. Right? So that they have actually used it very well to drive traffic. Browser Stack has a tool called Screenshots. They use it really well to, get marketing people aware that a product like Browser Stack can be useful for them. And a lot of their customers actually, surprisingly, are marketing people. They didn't expect that initially because they were a developer-centric company. Another example would be Intercom. Actually, Intercom has a wonderful product management blog, and then they syndicate a lot of great content around product management. A lot of people become familiar with Intercom just by reading the content. Right? So I think this scale booster is actually widely applicable. It can be used both by B2C companies as well as B2B companies, of course, and the SaaS companies. So yeah, it's
applicable across.
Yeah, it's
great. So let's now switch gears and talk about habit, right? What can companies do to build habits, and you can give any examples here as well, right?
Sure. Yeah. See, habit is actually one of those things that has received a lot of attention over the last few years, and I think a lot of that can be attributed back to a research done by Bain and Company, where they showed that 5% increase in retention can have or does have at least 25% increase in profits. Right?
5% has 25% in profits.
Yeah, at least a 5x, you can actually expect the profit to increase. Of course, in some cases, they found that the 5% increase retention increased the profits up by as much as 95%. Right? So I think this is one area that, is critical for any company to focus on retention. And then, comes the next question, habit. Right? To build a habit, I think it's very important to first and foremost understand what is the natural frequency of usage. And so, for example, you would order in a non-pandemic situation, at least you could order food thrice a day. So that's natural frequency. Maximum natural frequency is thrice a day. You could take a cab maybe twice a day. You can order groceries maybe once a day, right? You will buy a new phone once a year, 18 months, something like this. You will buy a car once in 3 to 5 years, and then you can buy a house, let's say 5 to 7 years or 10 years, right? So there's a natural frequency. That concept is very, very important for people to understand. You cannot push people beyond the natural frequency unless you become a category defining company. Then you have more, power to actually try to change that. But for most parts, as a growing company, you have to work with the natural frequency. Given that natural frequency, then the next challenge becomes, okay, how do we make sure people actually use the product as close to natural frequency as possible? Right? And I think one of the best examples here would be Amazon. I think right from the beginning of internet era, which is 1995, they've been working on improving customer experience. Right? I think long ago, there was a lot of talk about their patented one-click ordering experience. And so they did spend a lot of time to improve customer experience. But even after this, all the one-click experience, ordering experience, there was actually a bigger problem, which is that at that time, ordering products on Amazon, they had this minimum requirement of $25. So you had to order at least $25 worth products if you wanted the shipping to be free. Right? Otherwise, they would charge, I think, around $10 for 2-day shipping. And when we started shipping, it would take 8 to 10 days to get the products. Right? So it was a big challenge. And actually, Amazon, to their credit, actually realized it. That was a challenge. That they actually specifically worked to overcome that problem. And the solution for that was Amazon Prime, right? Which was launched, I think, in 2005, 2006. Right? So long. Right? Now, Amazon Prime, what it did was it actually looked at these barriers, things that were preventing people to order more frequently. And what they did was they promised 2-day delivery with no delivery charges, but users had to pay $79 at that time as the annual fee. Right? So that's what they did to actually remove this major barrier, which was actually hindering people from ordering more goods online. And actually, it did help. It helped them to actually start increase the frequency of repeat orders. But actually, surprisingly, Amazon Prime actually had a very, very slow start. Right? And actually, the reason for the slow start was that the activity on which this was anchored was e-commerce ordering, which was a low frequency activity. Right? So really what it did was it actually converted already existing good customers of Amazon and converted them into more loyal customers who were then ordering a little bit more, right? So, looking back, actually what happened really was Amazon Prime took off only when Amazon bundled in what's now called Prime Videos, Prime Music, as well as Kindle into Prime. Right? And after that, it just took off. It really went, 50-60% quarter on quarter growth, and really became, and it's obviously now crossed more than 100 million subscribers. Right? So it's very important. I think it's a very good, looking back, it's a very good case study. When Amazon Prime was anchored on e-commerce activity, which is an infrequent activity, it helped them to increase the frequency of ordering to the natural frequency that was then possible. Right? Then when they bundled in the videos and music, suddenly the natural frequency of usage became much, much higher. Obviously, you can start seeing the videos and shows on a daily basis. So from a monthly to a weekly activity, which is your e-commerce activity, it became a daily activity. And that is what actually really helped them to really take off. So they first built habits using Amazon Prime. And second, when they bundle in videos and other things, it actually became a scale booster for them. Right? And which is what is helping them to grow. Several countries actually, in fact, all the countries where they went after, like Germany, UK, Japan, actually Prime Video is the first service people sign up to before they sign up to the Amazon Prime, which is a delivery business. So that's basically a interesting look back into the history and see how this characteristics of frequency and importance plays a role in terms either of building a habit as well as in terms of increasing the scale.
And the importance of natural frequency, understanding that and going for habit building products that have a higher natural frequency, right? Also, you pointed that.
Yeah.
So, and how about brand building? Like, can you talk a little about that and some learnings on that and examples?
Sure. Yeah. Yes. So brand, like we discussed, is actually the emotional connect that the company builds with the users.
Yeah.
But actually, there's a step before that, and which is the step of building trust with users. Right? Now, there's a slight difference between building trust and building emotional connect. Right? So let me first talk about building trust. Right? So to build trust, company has to first and foremost make a tangible and verifiable promise to users. Right? So for Amazon Prime, it was 2-day delivery and no charges, no delivery charges. Right? Now, look at another example, another company which has obviously actually changed the mobility landscape across the world is Uber. Right? And what they did was they made a promise of quick pickup. Right? In order to make the quick pickup promise tangible and measurable, they actually started showing that the cabs that were around the users when they opened the app. So that gave an immediate feedback to users saying, if I'm saying 5-minute delivery, 5-minute pickup, it's possible because they hear the cabs which are nearby. Next, once you book the cab, they start showing you where the cab is and how it's moving towards your location. Right? This helps users to verify the claim that they're making, right? Which is that if this is 7-minute pickup, they can actually look at the cab and actually estimate whether that's a correct claim or inflated claim. Right? So effectively, basically, transparency in this case, help them to increase the to build the trust with users.
Trust.
Another example, sometimes it's become a little tougher, right? So I think I'll take example of HomeLane, which is a personalized home interior company. Now, getting a home interiors done is actually one of those infrequent activities, right? So you cannot have a repeatable promise here. Right? So therefore, it becomes a challenge. How do you make a brand promise which is tangible and measurable and verifiable? Right? In this case, after a lot of work, HomeLane came up with a very explicit promise, which is, we'll get your interiors done in 45 days, and if not, we'll pay you rent. Right? And I think it was anchored on this understanding of users' needs and wants. And the expectation here is that most of the industry, which is unorganized industry, promises something but doesn't deliver on it. Right? So to break that, to build the trust with users, Homeland's putting, a very specific promise, puts across a very specific promise, which is 45 days or we'll pay you rent. Right? Then once you make this promise, obviously, then you have to make sure that, you consistently deliver on the promise, right? So the consistency of value delivery then becomes very important. Right? And we can see this, again, going back to Uber versus Ola, there is certain different perception in people's mind. Right? It could be algorithms, it could be other incentives that the two companies offer, but one always does better than the other, and therefore, the higher consistency of that, wait time helps, one to build a stronger trust with the users than the other. Right? So that's basically, is the trust part of the story.
Got it. And how about the emotional connect aspect?
Sure, yeah. So I think that's the next part. And I think emotional connect is really where the brand gets built, right? And I think the emotional connect actually is a necessity, because the way human brain is structured, the outer part, which is the, our cortex, is actually, which is the logical and, interpretive part of the brain, is actually less stronger than the inner emotional part of the brain, which is what reacts very, very quickly, which is because of the evolution. Right? So converting this trust into emotional connect actually is a separate activity. Right? And for that, you have to actually dig deeper into not just the needs of the user, but also what are the expectations, what are their wants, right? And you have to actually cater to that. Right? To give you an example here, actually recently, few months back, Ola actually came up with a very beautiful service. It's called Ola Emergency Ambulance Service. Right? And what this is that they, during the lockdown, they realized that people are not able to go to hospitals because, everything is locked down. There are no taxis on the road. So Ola actually partnered with several state governments and hundreds of hospitals across different cities to provide an ambulance-like service, which can be used not only for medical emergencies, but also for scheduled checkups or chemotherapy, or other such things. Right? So this Ola ambulance actually a great example of doing good to the society, but also it has a beautiful fitment with a mobility company. Right? It can, it's easy to see how, you can, how Ola can, by doing this can strengthen its brand. Because when you see a Ola ambulance, it evokes that response and people saying, they're doing something good for the society. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, how you convert a trust into an emotional connect.
Okay, got it. So, and then maybe that leads to the fourth pillar that you talked about, right? Which is network effects.
Yeah.
And I know that you're a big fan of that. So
yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about that. And is it only in marketplaces? And maybe some examples here also will be helpful.
Sure. Actually, let me maybe, because you had asked this question before, and, I just want to emphasize that. Sure. Because a lot of these examples are, I've used so far are, from the B2C companies. So, just to emphasize that, emotional connect and building brand are actually very important for SaaS companies, B2B companies also. And just to emphasize that point, let me actually take an example of HubSpot. Right? So, HubSpot, obviously, everyone knows about HubSpot because they effectively created the inbound marketing field. But I think there's also one of the contributors to that is what they do very, very frequently. What they do very nicely is they actually have, an inbound marketing certification program. So what HubSpot realized by working in the field is a lot of marketing skills need to be upgraded on an ongoing basis because the field is evolving very, very fast. So in order to help people meet the aspirations of learning new things as well as getting a certificate, they actually launched this certification program and like academy, which trains lots of people. Actually, more than 1 lakh people have actually taken that certificate, and the certificate is highly, highly valued by the marketers. And so that's that from just to complete the story on the on the emotional connect part, building brand part, and how and why it's very important for SaaS companies to use it.
Got it. Okay. Cool. That's
And
helpful.
now coming to the network effects.
Yeah.
So network effects, it's highly useful. Like I was mentioning earlier that almost all the large companies in the internet era have leveraged network effects. In fact, a research done by VC firm called NFX, they calculated roughly 68% value that's been created in the internet era, starting from 95, 97, is because of network effects. Now, network effects is useful because what it does, it really turbocharges the other three value creation engines. So we talked about...
Just a recap of network effects and before we go into...
Oh, sure. Okay. So network effects is basically defined as a phenomena wherein value of a network or value of a product increases corresponding to number of users in the network. Right? So as the number of users who are using the product increases, the product on whole becomes useful for everyone in the network. Right? So there's
classic original example was fax machine and telephone networks and all that, right?
Correct. I mean, even actually cities are examples of networks, right? Because as more and more people start living in a city, more service providers come, so you have better facilities, which then pulls in more people because they are attracted towards these facilities, right?
Then it becomes Bangalore.
Exactly. Actually, that's the bane of every network effect. That after a certain threshold, the quality starts declining. So there are very, very few true network effects. There's always a cap on network effect, but I think with the right control mechanisms, you can actually, you can regulate the noise in the network so that the noise to signal ratio stays below a certain, threshold. Right?
Got it. Is it mostly marketplaces like Flipkart and Ola and Swiggy and all these, or?
No, I think so. That's the common misperception or misconception that, basically essentially only either social products, which is your Facebooks, WhatsApps, and, these kind of products, or marketplaces can actually leverage network effects. Right? So what we have found is actually network effects can be unlocked anytime you can get users involved in any activity. Right? So if you can, for example, directly get users involved in the scale activity, which is inviting more people to use the product, then you can actually unlock the network effect. And that kind of network effect, which is scale combined with the direct user involvement, I refer to as viral networks. Right?
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. I think the best example here would be maybe Dropbox. I think they grew to more than 500 million users based on a very simple referral program, right? And I think just to step back, what Dropbox, actually everyone knows Dropbox, but just to give that 1 minute thing, when you want to share a large file with another user, you basically upload the file onto Dropbox and you send the link to the other user, right? So now that link can be used by the other user without signing up to Signbox. Right? It's a URL and you can click and you can consume the content. But what Dropbox did in the initial days was that they said, if the other person also signs up and registers with Dropbox, then both the people, both the sender and the receiver, would get 25 MB of extra free storage. Right? So this actually became a way by which users started sending, not only obviously sharing the files with other people, but also subtly encouraging them to start signing up with Dropbox. Right? So direct user involvement is encouraging others to use, and the domain in which is being applied is scale. So combined with these two, it becomes a viral network.
Got it. So there are marketplaces, and then there are these viral loops, right, that are being created.
Correct.
Dropbox, and then gaming. So Dropbox is a good example of a SaaS company, right?
Correct.
So, and any other kinds of network effects?
Sure. I think you can look at, you can actually almost visualize there would be two more, right? One, which is habit combined with direct user involvement. And third would be brand or emotional connect, combined with direct user involvement. Right? So let's look at the habit one. So when a habit when a frequent ongoing activity, you get users involved in participating in that ongoing activity, it unlocks a different kind of network effect. And I refer to that as the exchange network effect. Right? And I think a great example of that, again, it got unlocked during the COVID time, is by a company called AgroStar, which is, I guess, one of the largest agri-tech companies that offers not only e-commerce, but complete range of solutions to farmers. Right? So what during the pandemic, due to the lockdown, AgroStar had to suspend the e-commerce deliveries. So, in order to continue to deliver value to customers, what AgroStar did was it started focusing on improving the customer engagement through the service they call Krishi Charcha. Right? And what Krishi Charcha does is it encourages community members to discuss crop related and other issues, which they face on a day-to-day basis. Right? And AgroStar, by experimenting and by iterating, was able to figure out the right mechanisms to get farmers to start answering each other's questions. Right? And by doing that, what they're really doing is enabling an exchange of information among the participants of the network. Right? So where it was one-to-many service earlier, AgroStar, getting people, either giving them advice or selling them e-commerce products, they unlocked this many-to-many conversations that started happening because of Krishi Charcha. And because of that, because of increased usage, increased repeat visits to the product, over time, what they started noticing was that the e-commerce transactions started increasing. Right? So in fact, they doubled the e-commerce transactions once the lockdown restrictions were lifted. Right? So exchange network, which is what I call this, where you have it combined with user involvement, is where you get people involved to exchange information, exchange value with each other, which then can be flows back into the company which is enabling that, and helps them to actually deliver, so to say, the main product also more effectively. And the third one, which is the brand combined with direct user involvement. I think the best example there is, actually across the world, is a company called Pinduoduo, which is a Chinese e-commerce company. And starting in 2016, they entered a very, very competitive market. There was obviously Taobao, there was JD.com, VIP.com. It's a very competitive space. But just in 3 years, they became the second largest e-commerce company in China. And question becomes, how did they do it? Right? What was this magic pill that they had? And I think it was very, very simple. It was really a connected network. And it was a brand, emotional connect, combined with direct user involvement. And the way they unlocked this was asking users, which was mostly women, women over 40, to create a team, a shopping team. And this team is, what can then purchase things together and get goods at a discounted price. But actually, what really was happening behind the covers was that women found, or in general, you can say users found a new way to connect or to reconnect with their friends and family. Right? And it obviously helped a lot because Pinduoduo was supported by WeChat. So they were able to actually communicate with each other much more effectively. So they connected and reconnected with each other while they were saving money. Right? And of course, Pinduoduo then made it even better by adding games and other interactive activities so that people can have fun while they were shopping together. And that's what really drove this rapid adoption of Pinduoduo and made them the second largest. I think they IPO'd at more than $25 billion, I think in 2019, if I'm not wrong.
That's nice. So you're saying network effects is not just making it more people adding making the network stronger, but using each of the aspects of growth, right? Scale, habit, and brand, and tying that back to the network, and thereby making the network stronger, right? Yeah. The other ways, like the virality one, the habit forming one, and then the emotional connect. All those are adding back to the network effects, and great examples there. Okay, that's helpful. Hopefully the founders and people listening to this are able to apply to their own examples and build their network effects, because that, if you go back to, you talked about Berkshire Hathaway and others, they've identified this to be one of the bigger moats, right? So to really build sustainably differentiated companies.
Exactly.
Right? So,
Exactly.
good. So maybe last question, and any common pitfalls while growing companies that we need to look out for?
Sure. I think I
I'm sure
think
there are many, but the common pitfalls.
Yeah. I think the first and foremost is we're talking about growth, right? And obviously, growth is applicable to post product market fit companies, right? And I think one of the most important things is to recognize that actually companies never achieve product market fit. Right? Because what happens is, as a company grows, they start serving newer set of users, right? And we all know that early adopters are very different from early majority, and late majority is even more different from the first two sets, right? So each persona, so to say, has its own needs and wants, and therefore the company, even a post product market fit company, has to always be working to establish product market fit. Right? So it's a very important point which actually sometimes gets overlooked. And I think we saw this very, very dramatically actually with Flipkart. Right? So if you look at Flipkart in the initial days, they were going after the metro tier 1 city customers. They had the best customer service support, right? And they built a very, very efficient and effective mechanism to deliver products to the customers, right? When they started facing competition for Amazon, they actually had to go back to the drawing board and relook at what really they want to go after. Which customers are the real customers that you will not you'll not let anyone else take, right? You want to ring fence them. And by deeply understanding the Indian market ecosystem, they decided that actually that is the middle India, right? So with that decision, they actually effected a lot of changes, very, very dramatic changes, which is, moving from a third-party warehouses to, company-owned warehouses, return policies, delivery times, big changes across the board. But it's very important to understand that these were necessary because this is what your customers were asking for, right? So if customers are not asking, or they don't need, or the expectations are not something, and you're offering, it's a waste of time and energy. So it's very important to actually keep that in mind, that product market fit is never achieved. You have to constantly be working towards that. And second part, actually related to that, is that even for the personas that you have acquired long ago, their needs and wants are not static. They themselves keep evolving. And so I was talking to Big Basket, a person who heads product and growth for them recently, and he was mentioning that 3-4 years back, actually this started almost 10 years back. In the beginning, freshness of vegetables was sufficient, and that is what people are asking for. In the current day, people are now beginning to ask for organic vegetables. They want traceability of vegetables, right? So what was a good to have earlier, right, has become a need now, right? And so your expectations have changed, and the company therefore has to systematically figure out how the expectations are changing, and they have to be on top of that. They have to be talking to customers and figure out how you need to change your products to meet the evolving customer needs and wants. Right? Swiggy actually has a very good framework for this. They call it ACB, which is accepted customer beliefs. Right? And I think that's a very nice mechanism to use to track how the user needs and wants, users' expectations and requirements are changing with time. Right? And finally, I would think it's very important for companies to keep or retain this customer centricity. What we have seen is a lot of companies start faltering when they start prioritizing revenue maximizing tech activities over user value creation activities. Right? And I would actually maybe use that again, go back to example of Amazon. I think they're a wonderful example of a company that has talked about the user centricity, playing the long game, and maintaining a very, very, pinpoint focus on users and their needs and wants. And so I think, that's basically, I would say, three important pitfalls that companies should avoid.
To watch out for. That's great. So with that, also you mentioned the Swiggy framework. You had done a podcast with Anuj on
Yes.
this. So in product growth, right? So maybe a quick brief on what you're doing in product growth, so that way those who want to double click on whatever we talked about, where can they do that?
Sure. Yeah, so productgrowth.org is a community, it's an industry-wide community. It's an Excel-supported but industry-wide community open to all startups. And the idea of productgrowth.org is to help operators, which could be product people, marketing people, ops people, to share their insights, actionable insights with each other. Right? So the two examples just I use, in Big Basket and Swiggy, I think we have spoken to the head of products of both the companies, and we have requested them to share what is those frameworks and principles that they use to drive growth. Right? And I think that's basically what the focus of the product growth community is, to make it possible for the operators to share in the trenches learnings and experiences with each other, so that as a whole, the Indian product ecosystem, Indian startup ecosystem can become even better and grow even faster, so that we can create more and more value, not only for the companies, but more importantly for the end users who all of us are serving.
Awesome. On that note, really appreciate you taking the time, and this has been extremely enriching, and hopefully the audience are able to take and apply many of these learnings into their own scaling. And thanks for being part of the Scale Playbook, Ajay. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed that chat with Ajay. Ajay walked us through how growing startups can drive scale, create habit, build brand, and unlock network effects. These growth drivers can be unlocked by identifying relevant category-specific activities. Entrepreneurs can use this framework to build these value layers to drive faster growth, to create more value, and to build sustainable competitive advantages in a structured and systematic manner. We hope you liked this podcast and got something new from it. If you have some feedback, let us know at Twitter at Axel_India and visit us on SeedToScale.com/insights. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with your friends who you think might benefit from this. Stay tuned for more episodes from the Scale Playbook. Thank you and stay safe.